So this is part 5, and this is the final part, I believe, unless I decide to put bits and pieces together from things that I didn't put on the channel yet, but they wouldn't be in order. But anyway, part 5 is where I dealt with alien external voices that dealt with me internally in my mind, just like how I was told my soul is a scientific soul experiment in the beginning of the 2-week mind bender, which I share or explain in part 1. Part 2 is where creation came and talked to me. I talk about that, where it gave me gifts. And then God, the Holy God of the Bible, he retires. And then also I dealt with Satan sifting, looking for the Antichrist host to take. I dealt with holy water and discarding it properly. I dealt with heaven earth, hell earth, dimensions that were on this earth. I dealt with, what else did I deal with? I dealt with a god in training, or an entity that, all entities are gods, I guess. And this entity was a god in training to take on the next planet that was going to be built for human existence after this earth is gone. And then I also dealt with the Illuminati using an AI program to mess with people in the test zone. All these things I already went in detail to. I just doing a wrap-up summary before I continue part 5. There's more things that I dealt with too, but anyway, part 5 is where I dealt with an alien external voice internally in my mind, and he wanted me to be a representative of Earth for them. And I told him that I was just a peasant, and that, you know, there's this thing called the government, U.S. government. You want to talk and deal with them. And I dealt with this voice for multiple days in a row, not every minute of the day, but on and off throughout the days that went by. What else was there? Like I said, I'm documenting this. This is part of the 2 weeks that I lived that I never really talked about. I decided to try and break it down and put it on my channel and finish up the 2-week experience. It was really weird because after I was dealing, the aliens talked to me, like, or the alien voice that I dealt with talking to me was like 3rd, 4th grade education, and I gave it half the English alphabet before I stopped, realizing like I shouldn't be dealing with this or helping them. I don't believe any of this to be true. You know, today, this is 2026, this happened in 2023 of September when I had the 2-week mind bender, but I experienced this, so I'm documenting it. They also wanted to take me off the planet, and I told them no, I won't go. And then I explained to them how, like, humans are made special for this planet, you know, by God, and that there's a spiritual realm of angels and demons, and if you try to take me off this planet, you'll be, you know, attacked, and the spirit realm will come after you, and you won't be able to fight it because it's invisible forces that you can't, like, fight. And I explained that to them, and I also, like, a couple days into it, believed that the federal government, like the United States federal government, contacted me through my mind, telling me to not deal with the aliens. That they're the aliens. Yeah, the aliens, I guess. It was just one alien that was always the same voice. And let me see. Let me see if I can give you an example. It was more or less like, war? What's that? That's how it talked, because it asked me what war was after I gave it half the English alphabet. I told them to Google it, and, you know, hack the computer systems on this planet. And there's a search bar called Gemini, Google, or it wasn't Gemini then, but it was Google, and search Google, and type in WAR of the English alphabet, and then it was like after that it was gone. It was like I wouldn't deal with it for the whole day, and then the next day all of a sudden it'd be asking me another question, something like war is bad, and it was just really weird, man. And then but yeah, the US government contacted me in my mind, and the crazy part is this all started off, like I said in part one, is that the first time I ever heard an audible voice that was external from me for this 2 weeks was, your soul is a scientific test experiment. So I don't know if there's technology out there and I got hacked by humans and they messed with me hard and they got some program they put me in for 2 weeks. I don't know if it was a spiritual entity that came across and like messed with me. I don't know if it was a health issue. I don't know what it was, but I lived it for 2 weeks, man. It was just wild. And I was conditioned to listen to external voices in my mind near the end of the 2 weeks, because this was probably like day 8 through 13 or 12, because I know the 14th out of the 2 weeks, the 14th day, the 13th day was I was dealing with holy water and being trained on how to use it properly to close demonic portals. Um, anyway, and this was prior, and then I ended up telling the aliens that we have, when they was asking about war, I was like, we have these bombs, like that are nuclear, and our government can shoot them into space and take out your spacecrafts. So you better like leave me alone. And pretty much I stopped all of a sudden dealing with them. They weren't like messing with me anymore. And it was wild, because I also had the thing where like they were unplugging me, the aliens, because like I had this night where I was laying with my eyes closed, and I believed that they were like internally unplugging me from their technology that was hacking me, my body, to talk to me in my mind somehow, even though there was nothing physically present in my body to make a connection to them. But I had all these like geometry shapes, and I had different colors, and I had different lines and circles and images that were like manifesting in my brain with my eyes closed, that I could see like visions, but they weren't a vision. But it lasted for a few minutes, and then it was like I believed that they were scanning my skin. Then they scanned my bones, they scanned my heart, they scanned my brain, and they did all the scans one at a time. And not that there was anything physically present to me, it was just like it was all happening to me, supposedly. It was really weird, man. And like I said, it sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy because it is crazy, but it happened. I lived through it, this experience, and I never saw anything like physically, like aliens or anything like that, except I did look in the sky one night when I was dealing with them, and there was like stationary objects that were in the sky that aren't normally there, and I was like, wow, maybe those are the spaceships, sitting outside orbit. And then I'm thinking on top of that, like when the government contacted me, in my mind I'm thinking, what kind of technology does the government actually have, man? Because it's like whatever they come up with, they're like 20-30 years in advanced technology before like the public would ever know anything about the technology, or even if they ever got to find out about the technology that's in existence. Because like I was believing after the 2 weeks, and especially with the government contacting me, it was a male voice that spoke to me. And in 2019 I had a female voice from the government talk to me. But that's a whole different story. And it was all internal. I just think it's wild, man. Like, what if I was some kind of test subject? And then I think, well, no, there's no way, because I had a voice come from my soul, or my soul spoke out from the trunk of my body against an external voice. So I don't know how that's possible, but it happened. And so it's more of a spiritual attack. See, I just had to logically put it together. It was a spiritual attack. That's all there was to it, man. I got hit left and right. And I survived because I stood on Jesus and God. That was it, man. That's what kept my mind sane through it all. That's what I believe. That's what I know. And that's what I understand looking back. So, anyway, I'm going to pause it and think. I will admit this is that living through all these experiences, it does make me question the existence of things. Like, is there aliens? Is that real? The last thing I ever heard that was external, that was internal to my mind while I was laying still was my son Jesus the Nazarene, who died on the cross of Calvary for the entire effing universe's sins. And when you have an experience like mine where there's God entities besides the true living God, it makes you wonder, like, who created the true living God and what's really out there, man. Because there's spiritual dimensions, and then there's entities, and then there's somehow able to hear voices, and I haven't heard any voices since 2023 of September or October, actually. The last thing now that I think about it, the last thing that entered my mind that I didn't ever think of saying or thinking to say or wanting to like happen in my head was time, time, time. And that happened in 2023 after I got out of the hospital. In the hospital, I heard my son Jesus the Nazarene, who died on the cross of Calvary for the entire effing universe's sins. So time, but that was like sentence. But then I had time, time, time pop in my head, and that came out of nowhere. And after that, I haven't had anything happen. So from 23 to 26, and I looked up time in the Bible, and that means 1 year, so that's 3 years. So I think in October or September, something big's going to happen that, is going to be out of the ordinary on Earth. I don't know what. And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just guessing because I had time, 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 and time means 1 year in the Bible. So 3 times is 3 years. Happened in 23 of September, October, and this is 2026. So anyway, beyond that, that's where my mind's at. I don't dwell on anything. I don't think about it. I'm just documenting the best I can my memory from all these crazy experiences, and we'll see what happens, if anything. So beyond that, that's the end of part 5, I think. Let me see if I can think of any other like bits and pieces to put in this, but that's the end in order. Yeah, it should just be made into a movie. It'd be the most craziest, wildest thing to see, man. It's so like out there in left field, but it really happened, and that's the reason why I can put it in words the best I can, because I actually lived it for 2 weeks. Um, I can't really think of much more of the alien stuff. It lasted like 2 3 days, and then I no longer dealt with it. Like the last night I dealt with it was the day I saw in the sky the stationary lights that aren't normally there. Um, with that male voice being like saying he's the federal government, it makes me really wonder what kind of technology they have, if they can access people's brains if they choose to. And how and why and what, I don't know, but it makes me think. It's just weird. But anyway, and there would be a reason for being a scientific soul experiment, because you messed with a soul, you know. That's that. One of my videos, like in 2019, I reached out through social media and I shared a testimony with someone, and then I had a two year experience where I felt like I was a targeted individual. I haven't really posted much of that on this channel, but it was for 2 years I dealt with some crazy stuff, but it was not necessarily similar to the 2 weeks. 2 weeks was like crazy because, like I said, I was told I was a scientific soul experiment for 2 weeks, and I dealt with that entity throughout the days of the 2 weeks, as well as dealing with everything else I shared. And then, like I said, once my soul spoke out against it, then it was like I was talking to a different entity that was of the same chain of commands, except higher than the original one. And then I spoke out at that, and then the soul spoke out at that one, and then I just kept moving up the ladder, man. So it's just wild. But I'm gonna stop because I'm starting to repeat my stuff, and that's in my parts. That's it for part 5, I guess. So God bless.